Hey, welcome back in. Sports Radio 950 KJR. Ian Furness with you here on a Thursday afternoon. And just a little backstory. We have been talking a lot, obviously, about what's going on in baseball. And while the back and forth continues, and who knows how things change minute by minute, second by second with the players and the Players Association and Major League Baseball's owners, and we go back and forth on, what may or may not happen, what may or may not look like a season. One of the things we've done on this show, anybody who's listened at all knows this, over the last 2.5, 3 months since the pandemic started, the shutdown happened in spring training, we've had a great opportunity to talk to a lot of the Mariner players, kind of some of the up-and-coming guys, some of the younger guys, a lot of guys that are minor leaguers that haven't even made the major leagues yet. And one of the stories we've tried to tell and even kind of get out there a little bit, and it probably comes from my background working for a dozen years in minor league hockey, is the fact that in the minor leagues, there's this perception, I think, in baseball. If you're a baseball player, a professional baseball player, hey, man, you're making 7-8 figures. You are in great shape. Financially, things couldn't be better. And it's millionaires bickering with billionaires. And while that is true to a certain extent, there's an entirely different part of baseball that has had more than likely a season wiped out, a season's worth of paychecks wiped out, and who knows where they go from here. And while some of the Mariner players, they spoke about it a little bit, they weren't as open, obviously, as you can understand with the team listening and everything else, as maybe you might expect. But we found a guy that is a great story. The story itself in terms of where he is right now and what he's doing, but also the story of being a minor league baseball player and what he is doing to get through this pandemic is pretty cool. And he's with the Twins organization right now. Mitch Horacek joins us right now on the Beacon Plumbing Hotline. Mitch, first of all, thanks a lot for joining us. Where are you right now?
I'm in Breckenridge, Colorado, and thank you for having me.
It looks cool there.
Yeah.
Is that your house? Is that what a minor leaguer can buy? And
No.
house in Breckenridge?
No, this is my grandparents' house. I'm very lucky to be staying here.
Take me through, first of all, where you were and what happened when the shutdown happened, and because it felt like with your spring, you were probably on the verge of maybe having a great opportunity this year.
Yeah, I had a great spring before we got shut down. I was in minor league camp for the Minnesota Twins organization. I was part of a group that the Twins call depth camp. So it's mostly AAA guys who they didn't have space necessarily to invite guys like me to major league camp. So I didn't have an invite. However, I was in attendance at most of the major league games as kind of like a backup. So, in spring training, the teams don't want their pitchers to throw too many pitches. If a guy has a long inning, you want to get him out of there because the games don't really mean anything. You're just trying to get work in. So whenever, one of the scheduled guys has a long inning, they'll bring in a guy like me to clean up. And so I had a couple outings in spring training this year in the big league games, pitched well, felt really good. It was a new organization for me, so I was trying to prove myself, and I felt like I made a pretty good impression before we got shut down on March 13th.
You're a left-hander, right?
That's right.
There's always a job for a left-hander, isn't there? There's always a job there. I got to think you were thinking, hey, this is my shot. This is my opportunity. I'm a left-hander. I'm 28 years old. I'm having a good camp. They're keeping me around here. You got to think that's a pretty good opportunity that all of a sudden, what went through your mind when that thing got shut down and canceled?
Right. Well, I became a minor league free agent after basically serving my 7 years of my uniform player contract. I don't know how much your listeners know about minor league contracts, but every minor leaguer signs the same contract when he signs into baseball for the first time. And it's a 7-year contract. A lot of players don't serve that full 7-year contract. They either graduate to the big leagues and they get put on a major league contract, or they get released. And so I was one of the few guys that, served the complete contract and became a free agent. And I had the opportunity to choose finally where I got to play. I was drafted out of college by the Orioles in 2013, played 5 years there, and then got picked up in the minor league Rule 5 draft to the Rockies, played 2 years there. And I was close with the Rockies, and just things didn't work out for me. And, I decided that I had better opportunity elsewhere, and the Twins was a good organization for me. Not very many left-handed pitchers in the big leagues. They needed lefties, and that's kind of why they came after me too. So it was a good match. And I was pitching well in spring training, and it was definitely a bummer when we got sent home. And, now that was 3 months ago, more than 3 months ago. So it's definitely a bummer. I mean, I'm 28. I'm not getting any younger sitting in here. So.
How hard is it being a minor leaguer? Maybe can you kind of, we talked about where you're living right now, and you're a college guy, college graduate. You've got a lot of things going for you athletically, but also outside of athletics, which we're going to get to in a little bit as well. The story's pretty cool what you're doing right now, but maybe give our listeners a little view, because I think when I go back, Mitch, and think about, the guys are getting, let go. I mean, every organization let a bunch of minor leaguers go in the last few weeks. There's a bunch of guys that are sitting on the beach waiting to hopefully play this year, knowing that probably won't happen. What's it like being a minor league baseball player? How much of a grind is it financially, and also because of that emotionally as well?
Yeah, it's not an easy job. And I will start off, I'll preface this question with, the fact that I like playing baseball. I'm not complaining about baseball. I mean, I do it, it's voluntary. No one's holding a gun to my head saying, you need to play minor league baseball. It's something that I love to do, and I'm pretty good at it. I mean, I've spent my whole life training to become a major league baseball player. So I'm it's my career. That being said, it's not easy. There's a lot of things that in minor league baseball that are bad, that they shouldn't be so bad, and specifically the pay. This is my 8th year, but in the years before this, I was making the minor league paycheck, and that is often no more than $1,800 a month pre-tax. So, if you go back and you look at my tax returns, 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, I was making less than $10,000 a year. And so for that reason, it's tough. I mean, I'm fortunate to have, a place to stay in the off season, but you got to get pretty creative to live on that low of wages. For example, every year I furnish my apartment with stuff from Craigslist Free. I'm a Craigslist Free pro. But yeah, and it's tough in other ways too. I mean, everyone's always coming for your job. I mean, it's a competitive industry. Baseball is cutthroat as it can be, and but it's something I embrace. I like to compete, and so I've enjoyed my time playing baseball, and I will continue to play.
Mitch Horacek joining us here from the Twins organization with some good stories. And before I get to the business side and what you're kind of doing right now, as you're talking about that grind, the challenge to me would be simply this, and we've even talked to some of the guys in the Mariners minor league system. I mean, guys that have never been higher than AA, that are on a 40-man or that are close to being the 40-man, that are being told, hey, stay in shape. Hey, guess what? You guys might be coming to play here in the middle of July, yet they're living with the in-laws or at a parent's or grandparent's house without a paycheck coming in, and yet they're asked to be training, trying to stay healthy, eat right, all those things. I mean, some of us that have gone through weight losses and everything else, like eating right's not easy. That's not cheap. I mean, all those things come into play. Maybe talk about the balance, the challenge of the balance between doing what you're supposed to do as an athlete and yet not getting paid for it at that level.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I mean, your body is not an alchemist. You get what you get out of it, what you put in. And so, eating well is definitely a priority. Eating well, sleeping well, training, recovering, the whole 9 yards is necessary in order to be a major league baseball player. Pitchers, hitters, doesn't matter. And so it has been very tough, trying to stay in shape, like training, especially under these circumstances. I haven't been able to go to the gym. So, as a minor league grinder, I improvised and I made my own weights out of concrete. I had a bar that was in my parents' garage, and I, built out 4 45-pound plates. I was mixing cement on my driveway with rubber gloves on, and I poured it with like a 5-gallon bucket just so I could lift weights at my house. I need to keep my arm in shape. So throwing, I have a net, a portable net that I carry around in the back of my car, and I have a bag of baseballs. And so I set up the net whenever it's there. I can find a good spot to, there's a decent spot here in town, and I just go down there and, set up my net and throw the baseballs at the net. when my bag is empty, I walk to go pick them up, and then I step back even further, and I basically play catch by myself. It's definitely not ideal, but I'm doing what it takes to stay in shape so that if, and it's a big if, I get invited back, I'll be ready to play.
Mitch Horacek from the Twins organization joining us here with the story of what it's like to go through the grind right now as a minor leaguer, trying to find a way to stay in shape, the balance, finances, everything else. By the way, it's an EQC Note Thursday. Emerald Queen Casino giving away $100 every hour on the station. So all you have to do is text in to 49451, first and last name and your town you're in right now. We'll do that coming up at the top of the hour as well at 2 o'clock. Mitch, what is your status then? So, like, what have the Twins told you and other guys in your situation as we potentially get closer to the resumption or actually the start of Major League Baseball?
Yeah, it's been a very confusing process. I think anybody who's been watching baseball on Twitter or wherever they watch it has been confused. There's been back and forth between the MLB and the MLBPA. In my personal opinion, I think they should have figured out a deal a long time ago, but here we are. It's June 18th, and it doesn't seem like we're anywhere closer to where we were a month ago. The Twins haven't really told us much, just because there's not much to tell us. The MLBPA and the MLB owners are pretty much doing their thing, and we're just waiting around to see what happens. I'm in a little bit of a different situation than most minor leaguers because, I was expecting to probably pitch in AAA this year. Like I said earlier, I was part of depth camp. So I was, I'm around the cusp of pitching in the big leagues, at least I think. And so, when baseball does resume or does start, they're going to need, you're going to need depth.
Yep.
They're talking about a 60-man roster or at least 60 guys. There's going to be the 40-man roster plus the depth guys. So I'm hoping to be one of those guys. Unfortunately, for most other minor leaguers, say the younger guys who, were expecting to pitch in low A this year, I really don't think there's going to be a season, minor league season. Logistically, all signs point to no season. So that's a tough situation. I don't know where I'd be mentally, if I didn't think there was any chance that I could pitch at all this year. Training is hard by itself. And it's even harder during the pandemic, like I said, lifting concrete weights and throwing baseballs at a net. The reason we do that is so that we can compete. But if there's no, hope to compete this year, it kind of deteriorates the motivation to train every day.
Mitch, let me ask you about the have and the have-nots of baseball and how they're represented, or in the case of many, not represented. And, as the MLBPA, the Major League Baseball's Players Association, as it goes through its process and it's back and forth with the owners, they're representing Major League Baseball players. And I mentioned when we started the interview, Mike Trout's always used an example because of his pay, but, the guys that are making 8 figures, the guys that have made, well into 8 figures in their career, that's one group that haves. The have-nots are a lot of major leaguers even. Guys, if you're a major league minimum guy or you're a 4A guy up and down, and you're living, you got to have 2 houses usually, a place in spring training and another place. And people always say, well, how can they not live on $300,000? Well, you try to live with 2 places and you just went through the whole process, right? It's a difficult challenge. What needs to change? What needs to happen? Because MLBPA represents, it feels like a lot more haves than have-nots, and there is no representation, right, for minor league baseball.
That's right. Yeah. So, the major league players, that's a completely different conversation. You're right. There are a lot of major league players, active major league players, that are not making the big bucks. And, I think that the system needs to change, and I think that it's moving in that direction. Unfortunately, there's a high likelihood of a strike for the 2021 season, just because there's so many problems, so many disagreements between the ownership and the players at this point in terms of compensation, but other things too. That I think there's going to be a strike. But with the minor leaguers, you're right. We don't have any representation. The Major League Baseball Players Union routinely negotiates away the rights of minor league baseball players and amateur baseball players in order to get more, for them, in the long term. It's definitely a problem. There's no, there's no minor league baseball players at the negotiation table. And that's something that I've been very vocal about on Twitter, especially because there needs to be, just this season or just this year, the MLB draft was cut to 5 rounds. And that is to the detriment of hundreds of amateur baseball players. And the most that they can sign for this year, after the 5th round as a free agent, is $20,000. So you got guys that are, would have been drafted in, say, the 7th round, and the slot value for that guy should have been, at least $150,000. And so here you have a guy who's definitely worth $150,000, and he needs that money in order to support himself throughout the minor leagues. But he's not. He like, all he can sign for is $20,000, and that deal was negotiated without, any representation for guys like that. So that's a big problem. And I think that's one of my main concerns going forward. The minor leaguers need to have a voice. We contribute to baseball just as much as, the big leaguers do, just in a different capacity. So we need a voice.
Yeah, I saw, Mitch, that, like Ed Davis of the Utah Jazz and some of the NFL players, when they went through the negotiations, used the term, we got to worry about the guys, not just the guys that came before us, but the guys coming after us. It feels like the Baseball Players, Major League Players Association, that's not a concern for them. And I guess which is frustrating and unfortunate. Now, people will say, hey, get a job. Right. And
right.
I'd always counter with, well, they're supposed to be training. That is their job. Your full-time job should be lifting your concrete weights and playing catch by yourself, throwing into a net. But you actually did get a job, in a sense. Tell people what you're doing. You put that education to use, and you're balancing everything right now. It's a pretty cool story, what's going on with you.
Yeah. So every off season, I try to figure out a way to, optimize my time. The off season, we're still working, even though we're not playing baseball games, baseball players from the big leagues all the way down to rookie ball, we're still working. We're training, we're throwing, we're sleeping, eating, doing all the things in order to become a Major League Baseball player. However, we do have some time, and we're also not making a paycheck. So every off season, I've sat down and like, okay, how am I going to make some money this year? And so one project I undertook was I wanted to find a job, find a trade that I could do from home, or I could do from anywhere. I could do it on my own time. And so I did a lot of brainstorming, but that natural thought progression led me to coding. And so I started teaching myself how to build websites. I learned, HTML5, CSS, JavaScript, in order to build websites, because that's something I could do from home. It's scalable. I could work for myself. And so I started learning how to code in September when the minor league season ended last year. And I made a few websites. Built a website for the gym that I was working out at. I built a website for a club baseball team, and I was building some small ones during spring training. When the pandemic hit, I all of a sudden had a lot of time on my hands, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to make some more websites. Like, this is something I've been working on. I'm going to get serious about this, because what else am I going to do, especially if there's no minor league season? I need to do something. And so I connected with another baseball player, another minor leaguer. His name's Anthony Shue, on Twitter, actually. And, at the same time, I've been tweeting, very consistently, my frustrations with MLB. And out of that was born some opportunities to make websites. I had a tweet go viral, and, I commented on that tweet when I had millions of people viewing it. I said, for those of you who are saying get a job, well, actually, I'm looking for work. I'm making websites. And so I teamed up with Anthony, and we started our own little company. It's called In the Zone Development. It's kind of like a play on baseball. He's a pitcher too. Play on baseball, also being in the zone coding. And so together we're building websites. We're doing Facebook ads for people. We're building websites. We're, fixing up, WordPress blogs for people. Just about anything that, you can do for web development, we can do. It's kind of it's been a bad situation for baseball, but out of that bad situation, we kind of built something that's good. So
I think you're building a lot. If nothing else, some people are more aware of what's going on in the minor leagues and the website. Plug it one more time before I let you go. What's it called? In the Zone, right? In the Zone. I'm assuming you have a website, right, for people to go to if they want to check it out?
Yes, it's inthezone.dev, D-E-V. You can find our portfolio there, and you can also reach out to us. We got a contact form. We're open for business. So if you need website help, advertising help, whatever it is on the internet, we can help you.
Mitch, I'm hoping that baseball resumes, and when they do so, that we see you on some form of a roster with the Minnesota Twins. You a guy we want to root for, and I'm rooting for you hard, man. This is a cool story. Thanks so much for popping on. I appreciate it, and good luck to you down the road with both the business and the baseball career.
Ian, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.